Things got a little crazy last night. The Minnesota Wild and Winnipeg Jets games with multiple things ending up in player safety's hands. We have a suspension and a fine to discuss some multiple injuries as well. All that coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, last night's game between the Minnesota Wild and the Winnipeg Jets certainly had a playoff game type feel to it. The Winnipeg Jets were playing for their playoff lives, trying to clinch their spot. Of course, the Minnesota Wild still having, important games too. Like, they know they're going to the playoffs, but they don't know their positioning yet. And they're trying to get as many points to finish as high in the standings as they can to at the very least either get home ice advantage in the 2-3 divisional battle or, trying to see how high they can finish here. So at the end of the day, this was an important game for both teams. These two teams do have playoff history as well, certainly rivals and playing in the same division. So it makes a lot of sense that as the game went on, there was a possibility things could certainly get ramped up temperature-wise, and you could see some things happen that maybe crossed the line. Well, things did do that, and I think a lot of this, could be, changed with the course of the referees here. I think they could have maybe did a better job calling the game, and I think they let things get out of hand. But in my opinion, things really got started for the Ryan Reaves hit on Dylan DeMello. That happened before any of the other things happened that ended up resulting in player safety getting involved. Reaves never got a penalty, and he doesn't look like he's getting anything from NHL player safety on this. But the Reaves hit on DeMello, in my opinion, was boarding all day long. It was very dangerous. It had potential to really be a significant injury on DeMello. Thankfully, it looks like DeMello's okay and didn't really miss time. Like he was all right from it. So we're lucky in that respect. But in my opinion, that's kind of like that thing started. But what happened later is we ended up a situation with Nikolai Ehlers in on the forecheck. He finishes a check on Kirill Kaprizov, which wasn't really that big of a hit. Kaprizov had moved the puck around the other side. He finishes his check, and he starts hard to back check back up the ice. Well, the puck comes to Ryan Hartman. Ryan Hartman quickly sees Ehlers coming on hard on the forecheck, and skating as hard as he was, Hartman had to know that there's no way that Ehlers was intending for contact with him. He's back checking to get back and to go battle for the puck. Well, he one touches the puck and braces himself for a really massive collision with Nikolai Ehlers. But of course, Hartman knew it was coming. He had the chance to brace himself and completely leveled Ehlers. Ehlers is injured, and we're not, of course, to this point, real sure on the severity or exactly where things stand with that. But he was given a penalty for interference. In my opinion, they could have resulted in a major penalty, which is, part of the reason I think why NHL player safety here has gotten involved. So player safety has had a hearing with Ryan Hartman. They've heard his argument, and they have suspended him, but only for one game. Now, the Minnesota Wild still have one NHL regular season game remaining, so he will not miss any playoff time, which I think was their biggest concern out of all this. Essentially, Hartman's argument to NHL player safety was that he was bracing himself for what he called an inevitable hit. There was contact that was going to happen. He said there was no choice. He braced himself. Contact happened. That's it. Well, they don't agree with that. They think that obviously he had the ability to either to move, get out of the way, or what have you. I mean, he could have gone about things completely differently in that respect once he got the puck. But instead, he didn't. He quickly got rid of the puck so he could brace himself for a hit. But he knew Ehlers likely wasn't going to be anticipating. So they've given him a one-game ban. Now, thankfully, in the case of Ryan Hartman, he's not considered to be a repeat offender. He was suspended before, but it's been quite some time. It was in 2018. He has received fines, though, on 6 other occasions, but not enough for them to increase the amount of time that he's going to have to pay and miss for this hit. Now, what happened later into the game, because things started to get a little crazy at the end of it as well, we saw a dirty cross-check hit from Neal Pionk, defenseman of the Jets, on Marcus Johansson. Now, that was fined by NHL player safety. He got a $5,000 fine. He was penalized as well. That, I think, is certainly, fine. I mean, obviously, Pionk's cross-check was, more than just a penalty. I think there's, I guess you could probably even argue that maybe a one-gamer in that case could have been justified. Pionk doesn't have any history. Not something you typically see from him, but at the same time, it was picked up on my player safety, and there are repercussions here. And at the end of the day, we almost seen the two coaches, escalate into, at least having a more of an argument. Rick Bowness was pretty ticked off because obviously after all that, to end the game, the Wild put out Ryan Reeves and Marcus Foligno to finish off the game after the Winnipeg Jets had scored. And Adam Lowry was out there for Winnipeg. Obviously Reeves was barking at the wingers. That was, trying to get himself into a fight. Lowry had to step in, but it was basically, this is the part of hockey that I think gets a bad rap when it comes to fighting, because it's almost like it's stage fighting. So essentially the Wild at this point, no, we're not coming back. There's not much time left. We don't like how things have gone here. So we are going to put out our tough guys and kind of escalate things further and cause some fights. And I'm surprised that there wasn't more that came from that. Rick Bowness was furious, yelling at Dean Evason. Said there was some kind of BS move, basically. Was yelling at him, calling him names. Evason was doing his best to ignore him. Eventually, I think at the end of it, he was kind of waving him over, like, come on if you want. But obviously, nothing materialized from it. But ultimately, the coaches were upset, both especially mad at Evason for those tactics at the end of the game. And I've seen arguments on social media from the Jets fan base. I've seen from the Wild fan base. I mean, I'm neutral. I'm here. I'm not a fan of either team per se. And I don't know. To me, it's the Reeves hit that really got things escalated in that period, which really ultimately set things to the point that they were. But at the same time, I don't know, between the Reeves hit and then the interference Hartman on the Ehlers, I can understand why the Jets were mad. Now, I'm not sure if that's what spawned on the Pionk cross-check and dirty hit into the boards of Johansson. He was hurt on the play. The word is today that he's sore, but not expected to miss time. I guess it's possible. Maybe he sits out the final game of the season as ready for playoffs, but it's nothing serious, which is good from that perspective at least. But I don't know. To me, the Wild started it, and I think the Jets were thought they were finishing it, but then the Wild said, no, we're putting our tough guys out, and it just made it worse. But we've seen moves like that before, and things can quickly escalate, which I do think there's room for fighting in the NHL. I don't think it's something that should ever be banned. I think it is part of the game, but I do think they have to be smart about it when you're staging it and setting it up, and that's the part that don't overly care for. I think at that point, though, the referees could have done a better job at maybe calming things down, and hopefully that things would settle. But at the end of the day, it was fireworks were going off there at the end of the game. Player safety got involved today with a fine and a suspension. It's not going to affect either of them for the Stanley Cup playoffs. I would think that if both of them are successful in round one, there's a chance they could meet in round two. Except they've met before. There is playoff history. They're division rivals. That would be a series I would like to see now that we have a little bit more restoring more drama going into it, to see how each team would respond. So let me know your thoughts on NHL player safety's reaction here today on the Hartman suspension, on the Pionk fine, and we'll discuss further down in the comments. I'll be back later with a news video covering the rest of today's news from around the entire NHL. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.